The Polygon extension brings a world-class PBR library directly into Sketchup, letting you browse, download, and import textures, models, and HDRIs all without leaving the interface, set up by experts and curated for consistency. Hi, my name is Patrick from the software team, here to walk you through the setup and usage of the all-new Polygon extension for Sketchup. Let's go ahead and go to the extension warehouse where you can then search for and install the Polygon extension. Once you have installed the extension, you can go ahead and close the manager, and then you should find a floating polygon icon, which you can then dock as you see fit. On a Mac, you're able to right-click the toolbar to then dock the actual plugin. Next, let's go ahead and click on the polygon icon where we can start the login. By clicking Login via Web, I'll open up the browser, where if I happen to already be logged in, I'll simply proceed to the next step, where I select my download folder. This is where we identify any local or existing assets and where new downloads will be added. When I click to choose folder, I'll select the default location, but I can always go to Extensions, Polygon, and then Settings to update it in the future. At this point, we already have the browser in front of us with thousands of assets at our fingertips. At the top right, you'll see some account information such as whether you're on an unlimited or a pro plan where you would see your credits, as well as a button to open up your account on the website. But more interesting, of course, is the fact that we have all of the assets and categories at our fingertips. We can drill into categories such as flooring and fabric, or we can use our lightning fast search by typing, let's say, tiles. Let's go ahead and find a good asset to import, which will show off the capabilities of PBR in SketchUp 2025. You can see as I scroll down forever, I will just keep loading more assets. But let's say that I want to import this one over here. When I press the import button, it will go ahead and acquire this asset if I have not already acquired it and I'm on a pro plan, therefore using one of my credits, and then it will do the download and import. If you are on a pro plan after you have acquired the asset, it will be marked with a little owned icon to be clear from those you haven't yet purchased. After the import has occurred, you'll see it has been already loaded into my scene with all of the PBR setup done for me, including the size of the asset and even setting the OpenGL format for the normal maps. We do also apply the ambient occlusion maps, which is more of an artistic decision you may want to tweak on an asset by asset basis. Let's go ahead and add a floor into the scene where I can then press on the import button again. And you'll notice when I do so, it is smart enough to realize that this asset was already imported to my scene, so it has not created a new one. And I can zoom in and see how the asset looks. I could also even change to another resolution, do another download, at which time it would create another version of that asset in the scene for me to import, where I can then see the higher resolution. Once you've acquired an asset, or if you're on an unlimited plan, there is no cost to download other resolutions for an asset you've already acquired or used. And there we can see it got a little bit crisper. But it is looking a little bit flat, and that is because we don't have any light source in our scene. So let's switch over to HDRIs and find a good one to import for our viewing pleasure. Let's say I want to bring in this one over here. I'll maybe bring this up to a 2K resolution just to give it a little bit more of a background and start that download. Once it has finished downloading, it will automatically apply it to the background of our scene, where I then recommend we go and tweak a couple settings. Firstly, if you press on the Environment tab and then go into the Edit section, we can tick the box for Set Location and click into the gizmo over here to define exactly where the sun should be pointing from. That will ensure that shadows are working properly. And then I find that I often need to adjust the reflection or exposure level so that it fits the scene a little bit better. But with that, we can already see how this asset is responding to the movement of the background and how the grout of the tile is really shining through there. Nice details and imperfections of the tiles themselves. So at this point, why don't we go ahead and add in a model to our scene? I will switch over to the model section where I can see all the different models we have, or in this case, why don't I actually search for chair, where I can take this already owned chair model and bring it into my scene. The first time you attempt to import a model by the extension, it will give you this pop-up, which is basically telling you that the SketchUp visible version of the model is a low poly proxy which is so that the SketchUp interface remains responsive. These are designed for V-Ray rendering in particular, where after it's been added to the scene, it will show a high quality version. But let's go ahead and press continue. We can then import this chair, and then as I get closer to the chair itself, we can see how the back is a lower poly version of the model compared to the thumbnail. If we were to go ahead and enable V-Ray, if you already have that installed, there will be a one-time setup that converts all the assets into your scene into the V-Ray format if it hasn't already been activated once before. Moving forward, everything will be imported in the V-Ray format automatically. I may have to, the first time, just toggle the render settings back to reload everything, and then we can see we have the HDRI in the background, as well as the more detailed version of our chair with the smooth model for the backing there. It is worth calling out that we do have a full representation of our PBR materials inside of V-Ray, and so while inside of the native photoreal rendering mode, we only have a limited number of maps that are currently available. If I were to go into, let's say, adding in a fabric, and let's say we want to download or bring in this 1K version of this fabric over here, and then apply that to my scene. If I open up the V-Ray asset editor and expand this asset, you'll see that it has a bunch of additional maps that are not supported in the native SketchUp, including the subsurface scattering and the fuzz or sheen map that gives it a more realistic touch. But of course, the limited set of maps will still work perfectly fine in the SketchUp photoreal rendering mode as well. Finally, if you have any issues or are looking for more information, you can click on the little question mark to open up the documentation page. If you're running into any issues, you can press on the little chat bubble down here to start a communication with our support staff, or since this is indeed a new extension, if you have feedback to share, we would love to hear what you think by clicking on the link here to open our survey. That's all for now. I hope you have a good time using the Polygon library with ease inside of SketchUp. Happy modeling.